We are now live.
Thanks, Amy. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the July 28th, 2021 City of Asheville Multimodal Transportation Commission meeting. My name is Dennis Wenzel, and I'm the chair of this group. We are meeting virtually, hopefully just one more time, but there are multiple ways for you to be involved, taking involvement into this meeting. Participation details, including links and phone numbers and all kinds of good stuff, can be found on the Multimodal Transportation Commission page of the City of Asheville website. Visiting this page is the best way to participate in our virtual meetings. Members, staff, and guests, please remember to keep your microphones muted at all times when you're not speaking so we can minimize feedback and other background noise. I'd like to now welcome our commission members. Members, when I call your name, please introduce yourself and let us know what interest you represent. Randy Warren.
Hi, my name is Randy Warren, and I'm on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Task Force.
Hey, Randy. Michael Stratton.
Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Stratton. I'm currently at large.
At large. Great. Hi, Michael. Kenny Armstrong.
Hey, Kenny Armstrong. I'm also on the Greenway Committee, so I represent a Greenway focus.
Hey, Kenny. Pat Katz.
Hi, I'm Pat Katz, and I am at large, although my husband is a very avid bicycle rider.
Excellent. John Bassone.
Hi, I'm John Bassone. I am on the Transit Committee.
Hey, John. Maggie Allman. You guys saw her pop on.
Hey, gang. Maggie Ullman, hot. I don't know about y'all, and from the bike fed committee.
Hey, Maggie. And our newest member, Bill Loftus.
Hey there, Bill Loftus. Nice to join you. I'm not certain of my designation yet, so to be determined.
We are working on that, and we'll get that information to you. Bill, welcome. We're excited to have you with us, and we're looking forward to your participation and the good ideas that you'll bring to this group.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next, let's get into the agenda here. We'd like to go through and review our agenda, review and approve our agenda for today. Can I get a motion to approve?
Do we want, Dennis, I'm sorry, do we want to introduce our non-voting members and other guests?
I beg your pardon. I always do that. Anna Sexton.
Hi, I'm Anna Sexton. I am the Neighborhood Advisory Committee liaison to the Multimodal Transportation Commission. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Joe?
Afternoon, everyone. Joe Archibald. I'm the Planning and Zoning Commission liaison to Multimodal Transportation. Welcome, Bill. Look forward to working with you on this commission.
And Kim Rooney. I haven't seen Kim pop up quite yet. I'm sure she's got a lot of things going on, and she'll be with us in a couple of minutes. Sorry about that. In my sheet here, that happened last month too. It's just below my fold, and I skip it, so I apologize. Okay. First item is our review and approval of today's agenda. Got to get a motion to approve.
I motion to approve.
All right, I got a motion for Pat. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second, Randy. Any comments or questions on today's agenda? All right, let's do a roll call vote. Randy?
Aye. Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Kenny?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maggie?
Aye.
And Bill?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The ayes have it. Motion approves. The next item is our minutes from the June 23rd meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
I got a motion for Pat. A second?
This is Maggie. I'll second.
Thank you, Maggie, for a second. Any comments or questions on those minutes?
I've got a question. This is Michael Stratton. So I noticed on the minutes, number 9, it mentioned Joe Archibald had made a comment regarding in-person meetings. I didn't exactly say what that comment was about. It's kind of a hot topic at this point, so I'd be curious to know if we can make sure that that comment goes on record as one way or the other.
Okay, do you have some clarification on what the comment might be? Do you have a recollection of that? Sorry, I'm getting.
Well, it was Joe's comment, so I'll let him take the floor on it. Excuse me?
I'm sorry. Yeah, please.
I was saying it was Joe's comment, but I believe he'd made a comment that was affirming, his position that we should continue on with some sort of virtual component to the in-person meetings when we go in person. But I just for clarification.
Absolutely, yeah. Joe, did you want to clear that up at all? Feel like it's misleading?
Or
incomplete?
I kind of just glanced over those minutes, so I didn't really see it. I just took a look. Yeah, the comment was about trying to making sure that we were able to have some, remote aspect of the meetings once they do go in person, just from a, ability for more people to participate and or listen to recordings and, so on and so forth. And there is some movement in that direction. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, great. Thank you. So with that note, and I do agree with this point, thank you for Michael for capturing that. I know that there was some other discussion going on about making sure that we can have greater accessibility for our meetings to other folks. The recording allows folks to get in when they can't meet our live time. So I think there's a lot of value, and it seems like there is some movement in that direction. As with everything that we're dealing with now, I think there's a lot of constraints from staffing, but it's certainly a very important thing to ensure access to our meetings and our information. So with that note, is there any other comments? Okay, let's get a vote to approve those minutes with the noted revision. Let's see here. Randy Warren.
So I wasn't here, so I need to abstain.
Abstain it is. Michael.
Aye.
Kenny.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye.
And Bill.
Abstain.
Okay, and motion carries. Okay, next section is public comment. Received notice that we did not receive any public comment for this meeting. Is that still the case, Amy, just to confirm? I believe that is the case. Okay, new business. Our first item we're about the discussion about returning to in-person meetings in August. Jessica.
Real quick, it looks like Kim has joined us and she has raised her hand. Did you have a comment, Kim, before I?
Sure, if I may. Thank you. So because we are returning back to in person and I'm not able to take that full time off of work, this will be the last meeting that I'm able to join you for the part of the meeting for some time. I prefer to be able to attend this meeting, but I'm not able to attend at this time of day. So I am glad that we are moving to record the meeting so I can keep up to date. And I have reached out to the chair to make sure that we have good communication back and forth so I can keep up to date as your liaison. Feel free to reach out if there's any other way I can support you.
All right, thank you, Kim.
Okay, well, on that note, I just wanted to give folks a little update about August. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. So there have been some improvements made. I recognize that probably many of you have never stepped foot in our meeting room, our actual meeting room, which is in City Hall. I'm going to show you, if I can, a photo. So there's been some improvements made that I think will be very welcome. However, I think the big thing that we're all wanting to see is the ability to have these meetings continue to be remote or able to be attended remotely, and for people to still provide public comment live and so on. So I'm not sure if you can see my screen or not.
Not yet.
Can you?
No.
No. Okay, so hopefully it'll pop up in a minute, but there have been some improvements to the first floor conference room, and that includes some audio visual improvements that I think are going to be really, really helpful for us moving forward. And that includes 4 new large screen TVs. They're 86 inch, which is about 16 inches taller than me. There are 4 of these that have been put up on the wall, so you'll be able to view them from any direction in the room. There's also been some Chromebooks have been added for each of the commissioners or committee members that you can use during the meeting. So you'll be able to see things on your screen and pull up any documents that you might want to refer to at the meeting. We've had some sound system upgrades as well. So the microphones are all new. There's the ability for them to be all controlled via a touch panel. And so we can, a staff person can power on and off all of the microphones and displays via a touch panel and control the volume levels on the microphones and such. So I think those are really welcome improvements. I know from the staff perspective they are. And so there's been some training that's been held for staff to be able to work all of that stuff. So hopefully when we get there in August, we'll be just ready to roll.
Excellent. You can see your screen now too, so we can see the image of the
good.
giant screen.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm guessing that there's the other 2 TV screens are on the left and right side of the walls in there. They also cleaned the carpets and painted, so that's good too.
Right on. Excellent.
Yeah, and so there will be the ability to watch the meetings on afterwards, I believe, although correct me if I'm wrong, Amy or Kim. And unfortunately, if you want to make a public comment in person, you have to be there in person, live in the room. Hopefully that soon will be changed and people will be allowed to call in just like they have been for council meetings, but we'll still have the ability to receive comments, voicemail, email, and I'm assuming potentially also on public input, but that's another one that I'm not quite sure about.
Okay. Well, it certainly seems like we're heading in that direction. I do feel like this is the best way for us to make sure that everybody who wants to provide some input can provide some input. So I think this is great steps forward.
Yeah.
Okay, item 2 is the FTC grant opportunity for 50.
I have some comments on that one.
I'll beg your pardon, please.
So I did not hear that we're going to maintain remote access, and I would love to hear an update on ensuring we have that public engagement method.
So my understanding is that has not been put in place yet. That has not been secured. I don't exactly know or understand what the hang up is, but all I can tell you is that I am not expecting to have that in place for the August meeting, and that's not just us. That's every board, commission, and committee. I know they're working on it, but
are they
I don't
committed
have any.
to it, or they're working on it?
I believe they're committed to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll just add that a handful of us have been emailing because we really love this. I mean, there's going to be many meetings where I can't attend because it's not remote. And I mean, our liaison just told us she isn't, like, Kim's not going to be able to join us at all because we don't have remote. Like, it seems like a big barrier to public engagement. And so a bunch of us have been emailing, and so far there's about 15 people from across 7 different committees or commissions who are all asking for maintaining the remote. So I'm in conversation with DAWA right now about that, and we'll be sending that along to council. So I just want to share with you, as our teammate and the staff liaison, like, I hear the progress. I know it takes time and effort, and we want to play our role in polite nudging as community members to maintain this important resource. So just, and thanks for those on the team who've kind of signed their name onto that letter. And if anyone else wants to sign their name onto that letter, you can email me.
I agree with you, Maggie. I love this whole format so much better. I find it much better, easier to focus, and be able to get up and stretch my legs every once in a while. But I mean, I can physically and time-wise attend in person, but I much prefer the Zoom meetings. I'll just throw my comment in.
Sure. Michael?
Yeah, just to be clear, is this a technology issue, or is this like a regulatory issue? I mean, you mentioned that we don't know where the roadblock is, but can we at least figure out, if it's that or the other?
So I think it's both. My understanding is that under the governor's state of emergency, we are allowed to conduct remote meetings. However, because those were specifically authorized under the state of emergency, the governor's state of emergency. The governor at this moment is planning to lift the state of emergency on July 30th. And therefore, there's not a legal authorization in place statute-wise for public meetings to happen virtually. I think this is a classic case of the law not necessarily being up to date with the reality of technology and the need. So that is part of what's driving us to go back to in-person meetings. And so to do so, though, we are still not, I think from a technological standpoint, ready to do that in at least the same way that we have been doing it over the past year. And so it's kind of a two-pronged issue, I think. I think obviously we all recognize that there are huge benefits, not only for ourselves, but for the public as well. And so we're just going to have to keep working towards that end goal. Whether or not we'll as a group commission be able to do virtual from our homes or wherever, I think that's probably the part where the law needs to be re-looked at, which could be more complicated. So I don't know, Kim, I don't know if you know anything else that I'm missing or if I'm saying it right.
I think you said it exactly right. It is a both, because we are anticipating that the emergency mandate will be, or emergency status will be lifted. We're getting ahead of that, so preparing in advance for August. I do agree that the technology is behind our regulation, or the technology is ahead of our regulations. The regulation is behind, but that's regarding. I understood it as voting members have to be in person. It is not clear to me if non-voting members would have to, so staff, presenters, or the public.
Okay.
Any other discussion there? Please.
And if they change it, I was just going to say, if the governor decides to not lift it, which could be, something that happens, we'll of course communicate with you guys and let you know. But for now, our August meeting would be in person in City Hall.
And to answer Maggie's question about the level of intent, we did discuss this at a point in our ARPA work session of council yesterday at 2:30, which is archived on the city's YouTube page. There will be a budgetary impact and request, as well as procedure to follow up on whether or not the meetings will all be available for streaming and for the public to engage outside of being in person.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Everybody good? We're good. Next item is the FTC grant opportunity for 50 Ashland. Jessica?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that as part of council's consent agenda last night, they authorized us as staff to submit a grant application for it's a Federal Transit Administration grant opportunity that popped up a few weeks ago that is due in at the end of August. And the grant opportunity is one that allows for planning, technical studies, financial planning, community engagement, and it's all geared towards improving transit service and facilities and looking at how we can address a number of different issues through transit service and facilities, such as reducing barriers to housing, economic mobility, systemic racism, environmental issues and climate change. So, you know, a lot of the things that the city has goals and objectives related to. And so when we saw this opportunity pop up, we thought that given that we just purchased 50 Ashland Avenue, also known as the Talbert lot, which is right next door to the transit center, and didn't really have a funding mechanism in place to go forward with a planning process for that parcel, we thought, well, this is a great match in terms of a grant opportunity. So we are going to be putting this grant application together over the next several weeks. When I say we, it's really a team from different departments, including transportation, planning and urban design, and community and economic development. And we will be asking for $850,000 to have we'll do a lot of things with that, but it's mostly going to be a planning process that will have a ton of community engagement and collaboration. It will, and ultimately what we want to come out of it with is a concept or concepts potentially, including site plans and what would be included in a future project. So we know that it's got to be a transit center expansion or brand new transit center. We know that it needs to include affordable housing. So how do we do those two things? What other uses or community services might we want to include? When I say we, I mean the community and the input that we received. And then what does that building look like? And also come out of it with like a financial plan or a phasing plan. Basically everything we would need just shy of like a full design. And so that would be the natural next step for this parcel and this project anyways. And this grant opportunity really aligns with it. And so I just wanted to let you guys know that we're going to submit an application. And I don't know, how long it'll take to find out if we get it or not. But yeah, just wanted to give you guys the heads up.
Yeah, that's great news. I think it's a great opportunity for an accelerant for this project, and at least getting some of the more detailed conversations happening now, which I think will get us to closer to more quickly moving towards that finish line for this project. So that's very exciting news. Yeah,
it'll help us position for future grants as well. So I mean, I'm gonna say it's unlikely that we'll get it just because it's purely a competitive grant. I mean, I think we have all of the great things going for us that could make us an attractive applicant to the FTA, but they're only giving away, they're only granting $16 million, I think it is, which is not very much. But there are not a lot of areas that would meet the qualifications. And so, I've never applied for this grant in particular before, so it's a little bit uncertain, like what our chances are, but I would say that there's probably going to be competition. And so I can't make any guarantees, but we're definitely going to try.
Good. Is there any way it gets partially funded, or is it kind of a, complete?
Yeah. So one of the things that we're required to do as part of the application is if there's an ability to scale our request, they want to hear what that looks like. So, and I do think that there is a possibility to scale our request. There are things that we could probably leave out of the scope that could be done at a later date. And so we'll try to identify where it would be most appropriate to scale it back if they had to. Hopefully they wouldn't have to, but that is an option.
So it's good to hedge our bets a little bit. Oh, great news. Well, good there. Okay. The next item is our upcoming retreat. Maggie and Jessica have been talking about that. You folks want to give us an update?
Yes. And Maggie, I would love it if you want to help out with.
I was just going to say, like,
our plan.
Yeah, no problem. There's a document in the agenda that has a lot of words because I write to think. So don't feel pressure to read it on the fly, but if you want to digest it, that might be helpful. Several of us with leadership from our chair and co-chair, Dennis and Randy, have been really thinking about, what's the point of a retreat in the first place? What do we want to get out of this? And really clearly, these objectives have been the starting place for any of the thinking that I'm going to share today. And that starting place is, one, to build trust and cohesiveness between us, because Bill, you'll learn, even though this is your first meeting, you are not alone. Most of us are really new. So this committee had a lot of turnover in the last several months. And so in order for us to really go deep on our work, we really need to connect and build trust. So we want to make sure we get that out of this. And we want to revisit, refresh, and reinforce policy visions that have already been established. There's a temptation with committees to vision. But we already have a lot of vision. We don't need to start from scratch. Let's build on the shoulders of those who came before us. So we'll refresh and then fortify that type of stuff. And then we want, this group in the last couple of months said, the Unified Development Ordinance and where development and transportation overlap is a juicy space that we want to sink our teeth into, because there's so much infrastructure being built through development in the private sector that we want to help inform that for those multimodal visions that we have. And we also want to gain a shared foundation of knowledge around the inequities that have happened through transportation planning and policy. So before we do anything moving forward, we want to really sink in what are some of the dynamics that have panned out in our community based on historic inequities. So that's those are kind of the goals or objectives we started with. And when we started there, actually, and I'll pause on that and just ask Dennis or Randy, who really designed those, anything that you would add or restate differently to emphasize of the objectives you're seeking as our leaders?
For me, I don't think so. I feel like initially maybe it was a little bit thicker, but in discussion, we've decided to really see if we can just narrow our focus a little bit and get a win, get something we can all agree on. There's some kind of inherent challenges that I've learned about through this process and what we're looking to tackle. So I think there's plenty of work for us to do, but just making sure that we kind of have a pretty strong and complete idea of how to make these revisions and how to make these recommendations, I think is really the direction that we should go in. So I really like it. I like the idea that there's so much meat around this topic that there's going to be a lot of discussion. I anticipate there being a lot of discussion, a lot of ideas, just because we're going to be changing things that maybe haven't been changed in a very long time. And so I think it's going to be up to us to really, massage this output to ensure that we're not going to get caught off guard once we launch something out of our group. So I think we're kind of right spot on with it. And I'm looking forward to kind of the group working together to get there.
Awesome.
Yeah, kind of real quick, just that we oftentimes respond to things that are brought to us. And so we vision this as a chance maybe to take some initiative to try and shape some of the multimodal community that we're in. So, it's kind of like not a traditional retreat where we just have a focus, but I think Maggie's going to talk in a minute about how it's kind of an ongoing process. And so it kind of is an additional thing that we don't normally get a chance to do just with our regular meetings.
Awesome. That's a perfect segue of so that's where we started. And then we came up with kind of this idea that we want to see if it sticks in your head by talking about it today with y'all. And the idea is one, if we really want to go deep on the Unified Development Ordinance and looking at some of our regulatory space, one, we might not be the perfect people to do that, right? There's other folks like Joe is our liaison between planning and zoning. Planning and zoning people know a ton of stuff that would help make this conversation thrive. And when you think about certain regulations of sidewalks downtown, the downtown committee would have a lot to add when it comes to that. Or when you think about, I forget who the other committees that we've been talking about, but those are the two that jump out first. The point being, what if instead of doing a siloed retreat of us, we looked at more of a learning series and a discussion series that was collaborative across committees or commissions. And so that idea, I think, Jessica, I'm going to give you credit for that idea, although Joe, I think it's been bubbling through a lot of us by collaborating together. And the idea is, okay, well, if we want to tackle those intersections of our land use, planning, development, and transportation, there's these different bodies that are appointed by council that could help us. And then staff really marinated on that, and Jessica talked with folks in the planning department and folks in economic development and kind of helped us have some focus, because the UDO is like a 5 million page book, right? And kind of said, well, there's two specific places that need is coming down the pipe. And those two places are, one, about the future of public space downtown, because there's been a lot of temporary stuff that happened for the pandemic, like think a parklet or think all the extra tables for restaurants. All that was kind of temporary programming to support pandemic social distance needs. But what's going to happen to it? Is it going away? Are we going to codify that in our rules and regulations, et cetera? So that's one area that's very specific that could get to public space, sidewalk, pedestrian, downtown infrastructure. The other place that staff identified, which might touch a little bit more of where this committee has been talking about, is connectivity through sidewalks in the suburban ring. And when I say suburban, we basically just mean not downtown, because they're regulated very differently. So when a big development comes, are they required to put in new sidewalks or bicycle infrastructure? Or if a single family home is built, do they have to do that? What are their parking requirements? Those types of questions could fall in that second bucket. So in summary, I'm going to conclude what I'm saying and then pitch it back to you guys as a question, because we aren't coming today saying this is a done deal, get on board. We're saying what do you think? This is what we're hatching. Is there a there? And the question to y'all is twofold. What do you think about the idea of approaching more of a series as opposed to a 3 hours and done, and have a series that collaborates with other commissioners so that we can kind of intersect our ideas? And two, if we want to do that, there's these ideas of downtown public space, which is parklets, which is benches, which is sidewalks, which is parking. And then this other idea of kind of sidewalk connectivity through development outside of downtown. And do either of those resonate with you as something you actually want to roll up your sleeves on? Or is that a place where you would want to put your volunteer time on? So those are the two questions I'll ask you to marinate on. Collaborations seem like a good idea, even if it might be hard, and those topics. And then also, are there any clarifying questions? Because I know I might have thrown out a bit of jargon. So maybe we could do some clarifying questions and then maybe just go round robin on responding to those two questions.
Pat?
I've been on the committee for a couple of years, and it's taken me a long time to find all the resources that are available. As Maggie said, we've got visions. We got lots of visions. I might recommend that there be like a reading list of the top ones that this committee touches on. The Swanona River Road, some of the Greenway projects reports. If there's a couple of sidewalk ordinances or things that are already in place that would be like the River Arts project, and the fact that so much of it has been done and there's 3 phases coming. Maybe a reading list would be helpful so that we would have a sort of a common base knowledge that we're all working off of. And maybe, because I feel like there's a lot of history that I'm not even aware of. And we have lost a lot of our people with those long memories. Does that make any sense, Jessica?
Yes. I'm trying to think. I'll have to put some thought into what that might look like.
Or maybe somebody else, maybe Lucy with the Greenway, or you could, I'm trying not to dump this in your lap. Maybe there's somebody else who could bring that in.
Yeah.
Pat, I know that personally, I have actually started creating one just on my own computer because there were things that I know at one point I saw and I went to find them again and I couldn't find them. And so I just started downloading these documents. So having that as a resource for us, it might not be the most efficient maybe in the structure of the city, but at least for us, we can go and quickly find these things. Because when you click into one of these documents, it's a 60, 70 page document. So even once you get in there, you got to figure out where you're going. So I completely agree with you. And I think there's a couple that I can certainly add that I've pulled out. We have a couple of links at the bottom of our agenda every month, but I think having a more complete list is a great idea because it gives us an opportunity when we bounce between these different topics, we can click in and get some really hard facts and some history to frame the conversation that we're going to take on. And certainly in anticipation of this group, one of the things that we did talk about is prepping by having a handful, maybe not too many to overwhelm everyone, but maybe having a handful of documents that just say, when we get to these meetings, we want to make sure that we're all kind of very familiar with these 4 or 5 documents because they are really germane to the issues that we're going to be addressing.
And I also have gone out in the field and driven some of these projects, and it makes a huge difference. Looking at the Tunnel Road, for example, and where they had proposed a parallel road. Some of these, and I still haven't walked all the greenways. That's on my list to do, just to have that in my head.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just these site visits really gives you, when you're walking through the space, you can understand how you would use the space, and then you can also see how other people are using it as well. So I think that gives us a great deal of context. Joe, did you have a comment?
Just to get back to the point that you made, Patricia, I know Maggie just popped a couple of things on there that she had on that retreat, that planning draft. The comp plan, the presentation even itself is pretty deep, but it's better than looking at the, I don't know, how many pages of the actual comp plan. At least it digests it some. And then there are some things I know that have been showing up at the end of the every month's agenda. I mean, I definitely think that while the Asheville Emotion Plan is fairly old, I mean, most of those at the end of the agenda are pretty like good basic starters, at least, for that. I wanted to just comment. So Maggie and I did talk some about, these intersections, like with the downtown piece and sidewalks and thinking about sidewalks in the UDO and places that aren't in downtown. Planning and zoning has also undergone a lot of change as far as new people. And in fact, in the next couple of months, I will be the only person who has more than a year of experience on planning and zoning. So there is a lot of change and these volunteer groups. So I think it would be great to have from the planning and zoning, even people, the new people coming in to get a better understanding of some of these things that always come up when we're looking at projects, but get it from this transit specific lens as well. So I think those collaborations would be really great and really helpful from both sides, and certainly support that. And Maggie knows, certainly willing to help out and make all that happen. So.
And Joe, what's your take on, do you feel like we can use the time well with planning and zoning to have a group gathering?
We can. I think it's just, it's going to be one of those, having done, trying to think. I know Randy and Kenny were there at the 2019 retreat, I think. And was Michael? I think Michael was. And I'm trying to remember, we had one in MMTC. Did we have a 2018, Jessica? Anyway, just having been through at least one or two with multimodal, we have not yet done one, a real retreat with planning and zoning. But I think it's kind of what Maggie was saying. It needs to be specific things. It can't be this big, broad. It's going to really have to be, we are going to look at sidewalks and parklets downtown, or we are going to look at, this related to this. And like, even just, if it starts getting into the UDO, we're going to take section X and that's it. And there's not this, like, there's light, how does it affect other things? But it can't be 30,000 feet. I think it's going to have to be like 10 feet, really get a little weedy. Even though that may be too much, I think that's going to be the way to make it effective and get something out of it.
Agreed. Yeah.
And just to add on that, if I may, I completely agree, because I think part of what I heard really strongly from you, Dennis, your leadership is like, we want to dive deep, we want impact, we want to move forward. And so what Joe's saying on something really precise and focused is a means to do that. I think the other thing that's going to be important to your question, Dennis, of like, you didn't say it this way, but one could extrapolate, like, will it work? Like, will we get anywhere? And I think what's important for us to think about is like, well, it depends on what impact is. The reality of a 3-hour or 6-hour cross-commission meeting may not be fully revised, perfect, beautiful language on a platter to say council, rubber stamp. I don't think that is realistic. I think that starting the collaborative relationship, identifying where we have places of similar principles or similar perspectives, and being like, we need to research this part of the 17 paragraphs, like that, I think would be success. So I bet that it'll be the start of us testing out intra-commission collaboration. And quite frankly, that to me would be really successful, because we aren't doing it otherwise. We're relying on staff to do that, and it's a lot. Y'all already are doing a lot. So I'll stop. I keep interjecting, but just
Jessica,
setting our scope is.
I agree. Jessica, yes, sir.
So just to kind of give you an idea of what I think you'll be tasked with, and of course this isn't all fully formed yet, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to present to you guys kind of the current policies, but highlight some of the high high level issues that we're having, recurring issues, whether it's code related or whether it's more geared towards, some of these programs that we implemented in COVID and we'd like to continue in some form or fashion. We're going to say, here's the things that we keep coming across that we have problems with or even questions about from a staff level. A lot of them are policy kinds of questions, and we're going to pose discussion questions to you guys to get your feedback that will then inform how we move forward, whether it's changing a standard or a policy or whatnot. So I don't think it's going to be like everybody's looking at code section 17 and like wordsmithing it and stuff like that. It's really getting a sense of what the groups think is the right direction to head in. Just as an example, when it comes to parklets, I call them streeteries actually, because most of our parklets right now are restaurant spaces. So some of the big questions that we're struggling with, and maybe there aren't perfect answers to, are like, what is the balance of private use of public space? Should there be a limit to the number of streeteries that we have? Should there be certain places that we shouldn't have them? Should there be a limit on the number on particular streets? Those kinds of bigger questions that even amongst staff we kind of have disagreements over. So, same with sidewalk encroachments. There's things that pop up all the time related to policy decisions on those things. So we're going to keep it like we're narrowing in on these very specific issues, but we're going to have high-level policy discussions with you guys and get your feedback so that we can form guidelines or regulations or policies or what have you that you'll then be able to react to. Does that help?
Definitely. Randy?
Yeah, I think that it's important for us to to get things done, to do what Jessica's saying there, get feedback from staff in terms of what they need help with, but also for us to do that from our perspective of a multimodal transportation commission. Because if we don't keep that in mind as being our overarching thing, then we could be any random group of citizens that get together and respond to things. So I think it'll be important for us each meeting to say, hey, let's make sure that we're viewing this from this point of view, because I think we're all involved with other things too. And so we can have those other points of view as well. But the reason why we're being asked for advice in this is because of our multimodal transportation perspective. So there's that overarching high level context in which we're answering very specific questions.
Agreed. Michael?
Hey, thanks. Just to be clear, we've mentioned parklets a number of times in this conversation. Are we using that in a general sense as inclusive of the shared streets, pedestrian priority zones, or are we just talking about parklets? And I ask because I just want to make sure if we do go to retreat that we're talking about that whole broad concept and not just parklets.
Well, that's a good question. So I bring up parklets and streeteries because it's a thing that's happening now, and we need to figure out what to do with it. So, in general, if I had to say what is the most important thing for us to focus on, I'd probably say it would be sidewalk UDO revisions. But because we have these ongoing pilot programs that we launched that haven't been formalized, that sort of necessitates us maybe moving that to a higher priority in terms of figuring out what we're going to do with it, because it's active, ongoing, and we don't want to. I think the consensus is that we don't want it to go away completely. So expanding beyond that to shared streets and things, I think there is potential to have those conversations, because overall we do need to have a public realm discussion. So that's part of that discussion. And
I guess just to be clear though, I mean, we're not the pedestrian zones also enacted during COVID at the same time as the parklets? So that would be part of the conversation then, or no?
Yeah, we can have a conversation about that for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with Michael. I think it should be broad.
Maggie, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was just saying, I agree with Michael. I think it should be broader than parklets. I don't think like all the vision that we're walking from, moving forward on is not as narrow as one program.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I guess, one of the things that I think about is if we're going to ask another group to join us for some time, I want to make sure we're being really respectful of their time, and we come with a tight plan that is relevant to the challenges that they're facing, and that they could provide some good information to us. So together, as two groups coming together, we can really create something that's going, or create some output that's going to be effective. And so, is this space, parklets and the shared streets, the best space for this particular application, or is it more the code conversations or sidewalk issues? All those things. I think. I guess what I want to make sure, I'm less passionate about what issue we choose to take in this group, and I'm more passionate about making sure that number one, we can get an output that's going to be productive, and number two, that we're really using well the time for everyone that's going to be involved. So if we're going to invite somebody in, I want to make sure that we're just really being as respectful as possible, and it's something that they too are challenged with. So, and I think Joe can, in this instance, Joe can provide a lot of context for, does this make sense, or is this kind of more a peripheral issue for, P&Z?
I'm not going to speak for the Downtown Commission. Guillermo Rodriguez, who's on P&Z, is on Downtown Commission, and I've had some conversations with him about parklets. So perhaps I'm speaking a little bit from Downtown Commission, but I think the Downtown Commission would be they would be the ones to collaborate with on parklets, shared streets, that downtown, specific things. As far as the sidewalks in general outside of downtown, that certainly is planning and zoning. But there are some shared spaces that are also outside of downtown. So I don't know, Jessica, exactly where that shared space is. I don't think there is a division of if it's outside of downtown or inside of downtown, or you can't really have a parklet outside of downtown, even if it's in your parking space or parking lot. It's kind of the same thing. Anyway, I agree. I think it does need to be, perhaps when I made that comment about it can't be at 35,000, it's got to be at 10 feet. It doesn't need to get super into every single line of the UDO, but it needs to be focused around something instead of just, here's the UDO, because I don't know it's huge. It needs to be some focus around that. So.
Yeah, because you could have a 8-hour conversation about one line of the UDO and the pros and cons of changing one word or one number. And so, we're really trying to strike a balance of focusing on some of the bigger repetitive things that come across our desk daily, weekly, that have a lasting impact as well, especially when it comes to sidewalks and some of the things that we require or not. They have an impact that lasts for generations, right? So even those small lines in the code can have a huge impact overall. And so there's a lot of policy discussions to be had.
Agreed. Maggie?
You're muted, Maggie.
What y'all are bringing up makes me think, and Joe, I might even look to you to kind of ask your opinion too, is like, we've chatted, but like, should we ask to have us on a P&Z agenda to like pitch this idea and add to the list or get their feedback? And like, is that something you would want to carry from MMTC, or we could collaborate and I could help? Or because I think that is the next step, right? Like the first step was like, do we like this? And I'm not hearing anyone be like, this is a bad idea. And so if we are into it, then checking in with the other commissions and who should do that. And that's the question I'd see up.
Yeah, certainly. And I've broached at least the subject with Shannon Tuck in planning department, who's essentially the one who, directs and coordinates the planning and zoning meetings. I broached the subject with her about it, and certainly we'll be having conversation. In fact, at next week's meeting, at our pre-meeting, I was going to plan on bringing that up with everybody, just to be like, hey, here's kind of what we're talking about. And again, it's so what Patricia mentioned a minute ago about there's so much information out there. I'm hearing from the 4 new members that are on planning and zoning already, like, where do we start? So again, I think my sense is they are going to be very interested in this to get that knowledge. And so I feel pretty good that this can come together and benefit everybody, for sure.
Excellent. That's great. Great information. Maggie, do you see, the way that this is kind of coming together in my head is I'm seeing maybe there are two different groups that we have, or two, maybe it's not really a retreat. It's just more of I guess it is a retreat with these 2 groups. And then we can have 2 sets of output. So one would be kind of, taking care of the issue or addressing the issue that we have downtown, and the addressing the issue that we have maybe throughout the city. And I really like that idea. Now that I think of it that way, I feel like it can work well. So is that kind of, where you feel like we're heading?
That's what it sounds like. The one thing I'd ask this group, and Dennis, you brought up a minute ago, like, your passion is progress, and like topic wise, you were saying you didn't have like a big opinion, but I'd ask this group, like, if no one cares about connecting sidewalks in the suburban ring, then like, we should just like let that one chill, so I guess my question to y'all is, do we have the interest and momentum of having kind of 2 tracks? Because you're right, one would be downtown commission, sidewalks, shared street, that stuff, and another collaborative meeting would be like planning and zoning and sidewalks in the UDO. And so from this group, maybe everyone could put something in the chat, or we could all go around like, do you want to spend your time on both those topics? If not, we could whittle this down and just have a more focused track to take one of the prongs. And I'm up for both, but if I had to pick, I might be more interested in the sidewalks in the suburban ring, because I also think there's a lot of momentum around the downtown sidewalk stuff. But I'm up to play ball on both, because I think we could do good things. So that's kind of my kickoff of this round robin.
Okay. Anna?
Thanks. I am enthusiastically on board for addressing both issues. I like that there's sort of a common theme for both of them, but they're kind of looking at 2 fairly different, I think, environments. Like, I live in West Asheville. I don't go downtown because of a lot of issues, or overcrowding, or, this, that, or the other, for a lot of reasons, a lot of the time. But I think that there's a lot of important things to address in terms of connectivity and, being mindful of ADA requirements and getting people to be on foot and on bike rather than drive downtown. So I see that as something that's really important, but I also see, just with like the continued proliferation of development and the growth that the city, but also like the metro region is experiencing on a whole, I would love to sort of address the sidewalk connectivity issue too. And I think that's a really hot topic. So, and just to echo what Michael said, I think that, with sidewalks in the suburban ring and the outer edges of town, you're able to actually connect people into downtown. So thanks.
Thank you. Bill?
So just a couple reactions. First, the original question was, are we good with the idea of the series? Maggie, was one of your questions, and I'm all into that. I can't imagine doing anything successfully without it being a series. And the other just reaction is as I heard these ideas, I'm not at a position where I've got a priority of ideas. I don't have a one, I don't have 100, but I know there are many. So as I think about the context of this idea of having retreats and getting together and so forth, I love the fact that the main point is to get trust amongst each other, and so we can work more collegially as a group. And so I sense from that process, topics will come up. And my sense is these are the first two ideas that have happened, right? And I would assume that there are going to be many other ideas that we're going to want to study together. So these are just the first of two of many. Is that a proper interpretation of this conversation? Because that's kind of where I'm coming from. I could see it almost endless. And I'm perfectly fine with those two ideas. They're as good as any in my mind. But I don't know. I just want to share that reaction because it seemed like we were all of a sudden starting to land on two ideas, where in my mind, there's a whole lot more than just two ideas we have to deal with. I'll pause and get some reactions.
Maggie, you want to offer some thoughts?
Yes, that makes sense. Agreed. I mean, what I would say is I think these ideas have been snowballing amongst this new group of committees through the spring, this like transportation and development. And so I think that's why we're kind of seizing the opportunity of a specific thing. But I think your point is generally there of like, we want to focus those retreat times so that we can get some progress. But I think that naturally other ideas will come up and we'll kind of be creating a collaborative work plan where it's like, great, after we totally nail it with this project and we move on, we'll go to these, and these. And I think that we just need to be doing some good record keeping of that. And I just appreciate you like flashing glitter on the relationship building stuff. So that is like, you see my inner camp counselor coming out, but like it comes out for a reason. My work professionally is collaboration with nonprofits and foundations. And I've seen attempts without trust and intimacy and attempts with, and it's always 1 million times more successful when folks are really candid and trusting. So excited that that resonates with you.
Joe?
One thing, and I hadn't mentioned it, and it's just kind of gelling in my mind now, because I agree with Bill. You know, these are two topics. The list is endless, frankly, and you know there hasn't really been a lot of cross committee collaboration necessarily. You know, I'm trying to think of other committees like, you know, this commission has Anna and myself from other committees that are on it. You know, planning and zoning doesn't necessarily have somebody that sits from someone else. Affordable housing doesn't have somebody that sits from planning and zoning, although I try to, you know, catch as much as I can. But, you know, that idea of collaboration across some of these commissions that needs to happen, maybe putting the word retreat on it may make it seem a little more, I don't know, onerous is the right word, but maybe too big. I'm wondering if it almost needs to be, even from the standpoint of getting something done, like it's an hour and a half. Like it's not even a half a day. It's like we're sitting down, hey, 15 minutes of kind of finding out who people are, and then it's diving into something, because the idea is that these could be a couple times a year. Like, I think it needs to be maybe shorter to start as opposed to something really long and drawn out. Then people are like, oh my gosh, you remember that fall of 2021?
Yeah, the t-shirt and everything.
You know, so that's a thought. I don't know, Maggie, how you were thinking time frame that each of these would be, but I don't know. Some part of me feels like 2 hours, maybe a little more, like might be good for a start. I don't know.
Yeah, we can figure that out. I agree. I think it's going to be, well, the previous workshops or retreats have been like 8 hours, and all we came out of it every single time was like a list of bullet vision items and goals. And so that's great. Let's look back at that stuff. I think it's going to be really cool to try a different approach, have these cross conversations. I think a joint workshop or something like that is probably a more accurate description of what we're trying to do. And whether it's an hour and a half or 2 or whatever, we'll figure that out, because too long is too long, especially these days. If we're doing, I guess we won't be doing it remotely, but the only thing I would say is that it'll be a little difficult potentially to balance the quote unquote normal meeting information that we do like we're doing now and this. So that there might need to be like a sacrifice on having a meeting where I present you guys information. Maybe I give you like a monthly update, and there's like 30 minutes in the beginning of a joint work session where we go over regular agenda type items. So that'll be something that I need to think about, is how to balance the regular stuff with the special workshop, and not make you guys do like 2 meetings a month or something like that, because I don't want to do that.
Agreed. Kenny?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Bill said about, I think we should be calling them something other than retreats. And I think that the focus of the retreat should be identifying these topics that we want to dive into more deeply. And could it be that we just allocate time during our regular meetings for specific topics? So, map it out over the year so that, okay, October's meeting, we're really going to be focusing on the parklet issue. And then we have that full meeting time just to talk about it, invite planning and zoning members to our meeting, not in an official capacity, but just to be there, knowing that it's the core of the agenda for that meeting. And like Jessica said, she can kind of run through the other topics that need to get talked about, as they develop. But the focus of that meeting is 2 hours to talk about a specific piece that we identified in our retreat. I think that makes sense to me, because then you're right. You don't want to have to ask people to come to more and more meetings and trying to get a quorum with us and planning board. And it seems like if we can just even extend our meeting by half an hour or an hour and then really focus on one topic, I think that might be a good way to do it, and not call it a retreat. The retreat can be a separate thing where we sit down for 8 hours or whatever to identify these topics that we're going to be going over.
Yeah, I can see a couple of things that have come up just in the discussion is, I think to Bill's point, I feel like these, our time together is going to spit out other ideas, and they're not venue specific ideas. We can incorporate those, to Kenny's point, into our meetings going forward, and we have this kind of list of items that are in the future, and we can add to that as these other things come up. But I like the idea of us having a dedicated time in tackling these 2 issues. I think these 2 issues are important. We kind of hinted around a little bit when you're choosing between the 2, but I see the parklets and the downtown stuff as having a great deal more visibility, but I see the neighborhood connection as being much more important, to give access, to give safe accesses to these other areas. Like, as we build this network of greenways, we want to make sure that people can get to them safely without having to put their bike in their car or put it on a bus and get to the greenway. I think you should be able to enjoy that greenway by getting your bike there, or whatever it might be. So that's kind of how I fall between the 2 pieces. My inclination is to have some type of event I like the idea of setting a very specific timeline. And I think it'll accomplish some of the issues. One of the things that we talked about very early on, Maggie, was this kind of the bringing together of the group. And I think that's going to naturally happen if we have something that we can really sink our teeth into and feel like we can get a win out of. So I'm still kind of leaning toward maybe, trying it at least to have some type of event that's separate from our meeting so we can get together with or without another group. I'm still, I think I'm deferent to whatever the group thinks is the best idea, but without, PNC or the downtown group. To tackle one of these things. So I'm kind of interested in hearing of other folks' ideas that way. Do you feel like we can get that done, or do you feel like we're creating too many challenges for the group to a time commitment, too much time commitment for the group? Joe?
I'll just jump in and say, I think, this is Jessica, I think perhaps what if, like in the outline that Maggie's proposed, we have our September meeting and maybe it's just the normal length and we have it be more of a traditional retreat, kind of getting to know you, what are our high level goals and things that we want to focus on for the next year. That way, perhaps for the October meeting, staff will be in a better position to have a comprehensive meeting, joint session on topic A, which I think it would be the downtown public space stuff. And then perhaps at the November, December meeting that we have topic B. But our September, we could have like mini overviews of plans, potentially getting to know you, retreat typey stuff. Maybe that's 2 hours, maybe it's 3 hours, I'm not sure.
I'll jump in real quick because I like doing that. And I like that idea because it really does build off of what you were saying, Bill, which wasn't sinking in fully until Kenny, you were explaining what you were thinking of. Like, what I'm hearing now that I wasn't a minute ago is like, we have these two ideas to go deep that staff largely helped surface based on things we've talked about in the past. But if we do this September meeting idea, we can come up with a longer range list of priorities and work plan stuff. And these two might stay on the priority list for us. And hopefully they will, because it sounds like a bunch of us already interested. But then it gives us the advantage of stepping back and doing a long range so that other ideas are prioritized as a group and that we don't miss that part. So I guess I'm just reiterating, Jessica, I like your suggestion to incorporate that. But Kenny, I'm wondering, like, does that, and Bill, does that support where you were going? Is that like scratching that itch or like making that comment work? Does that make sense?
Bill raised his hand, so I'll let him go first.
Okay, Bill?
I think lacking a separate event, we're going to miss out on the trust building piece. So I think you've obviously put a lot of thought into it, and I think it's well deserved that we go for. To me, I'm all in. I think a separate, it's special. It can build trust. If we have a special event or a special topic, we've got a focus area. It all makes sense. I think if we try to rope all this into regular committee meetings and put it at the end or outline it, or we'll always have topics in meetings, right? The topics always exist in meetings. If that's all we're doing, then we're not changing. So I think you put a lot of thought in this, and I think I think it makes sense to me. That's my reaction.
Yeah, and Maggie, I agree with Bill. I think that the focus of the regular meeting is to make decisions about things. So having the background of, well, we all sat in the room for 6 hours with the planning and zoning board to kind of hash it out and figure out what we think and look at the materials and kind of process it. By the time we get to our regular meeting, we can have action steps, we can have motions, we can move forward on things and push things in a direction we want to take them. So I agree. I think it would be cool to have a get to know you icebreaker retreat, solidify our relationship with each other, and come up with a list of topics that make sense, including these two. And I do think that the downtown parklets is more pressing because I think the city is going to be kind of disallowing those in the near term. So we need to come up with some ideas on it. But anyway, yeah, I agree. Having these workshops with, whatever other groups we need to invite. And I don't know if they're official meetings or just kind of, hosted by the Multimodal Commission to kind of talk about it. But I think that's a good idea.
Joe, I think you've kind of bounced around a little bit.
Let John and Patricia go first.
Oh, okay, sure thing. Patricia?
I like the meet and greet part of it because I don't feel like I know you guys. I don't know who's married. I don't know who has kids. I don't know who's retired. I don't know who's a landscape architect like me or somebody where your backgrounds are. And I've been on the committee for 2 years. I feel like adult. I don't know you guys. And I would think that would be more the point of the retreat, and that we all do our homework on what has come before so that we all have I've just been scrolling through some of the lists and I'm like, I've looked at these things before, but I need to just sit down and really read them and maybe print them out and read them over and over and over again, and go visit all these sites. But that's something I don't have to do in a group. I think having an idea where you all are coming from, what your backgrounds are, would be a lot more helpful to me than deciding what the connectivities and all that is, because so much of that has already been done, is in print and is available online. But if we had more of a sense of who we were as a group, we might be able to stream through these meetings faster.
Thanks, Pat. John? Oop, we lose John.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry. So I agree with what Bill and Pat and Kenny said. I have not attended another retreat with this commission, so I don't know. In the past, was it an 8-hour retreat? Was it just a few hours? Because I've been on other boards and commissions, and usually it's like an all-day affair where you kind of do a deep dive, right? You get to know each other, you build the trust, and then you do a deep dive and kind of come up with a long-term vision for the next year, right? That's kind of what I imagine as a retreat. I really like the idea of having, some smaller sessions as well, like a series of workshops throughout the year with the other commissions. But I think it is important that we build trust and get to know each other as a group, so that we can work together. Because I think that it goes back to what Maggie said, that building trust, that's the foundation that we need to have going forward to work effectively.
Thanks, John. I agree. Joe?
Maggie, and this is one, I'm just going to bring it up now because it popped up. It may be that, maybe it's Multimodal sits down to talk about the parklet thing and you invite people from Downtown Commission. Maybe it's one or two, maybe you get the chair and somebody else, maybe because of, volunteer time. And I try to be aware of that, just how much, time it takes, to do these, so maybe you don't end up getting the entirety of who you're inviting, or maybe it's not even the entirety of Multimodal. I know that some of you all have sat down with these DOT meetings about Merriman, and you kind of bring it back. And that's kind of how, essentially I work, and I'm sure Anna does, from our respective, commissions. So, maybe it's grabbing 2 or 3 people who are interested, and it's kind of that cross collaboration that then goes back out. One thing I did want to add, and I think this can get to that, what what Pat mentioned and Bill and John and pretty much everybody. You know, I have been, you know, Kenny and Michael and Randy were in that retreat in January, or was it October 2019? And, you know, from Multimodal, with the new people that have come in, I've reached out, I've sat down with a couple of them, you know, had coffee, gotten to know them. And, you know, I think that's really great too, especially with the way this has happened over the last 18 months of just seeing you all this way. You know, it's been nice to be able to connect, like Michael and I walked downtown with the whole shared streets thing way back last year. And, you know, I've sat down with Maggie. So, just to put that out there, that I have done that with people on planning and zoning, certainly happy to do it with any of you all. And, you know, as long as Jessica's not listening, as long as you don't have more than 3 of you, it's not a quorum.
Thank you. That is very good advice for us to get together when we can. I know that we had a little bit of time going downtown with the small groups, and I think it is functional. You get to know folks, and you also, I think, you learn some history because everyone's bringing different histories to the group. So, Maggie, do you have enough input response from us? Excellent. I'm really excited about this. I think it's heading the right direction, and I feel like we're also all on board for it too. So I can't wait for it to happen. Any other comments on this topic? All right.
Thanks, everyone. This is lively. This is going to be really fun.
Good. Looking forward to it. Okay, next item is the revisiting the bike share plan, the e-scooter goal is next with Jessica.
So my plan was to have a revised draft to show you guys today, but we didn't succeed in getting that finished. Dan Bechtold is working on revising pieces of the plan to reflect what we believe are some more current recommendations, including looking at just moving forward with the bike share piece and recommending that the scooter piece be looked at separately, and that a next step for the scooters would be to look at the ability for private individual use rather than having a shared e-scooter system. So Dan's been working on tweaking the language of the plan to reflect those recommendations, and also include some information about the bike share piece in terms of it being a system that is not necessarily a lock-to system, which was the original recommendation, because since even that was made, the technology has advanced significantly to where you can not necessarily have a physical, you don't have to physically have a lock, a place for the bike to lock to, because the bikes basically lock themselves, but you can define areas, small areas of pavement to have places where the bikes are parked and stationed. They're just not necessarily physically locked anymore. And the reason why that's an important distinction is because of the cost implications that are related to it. So anyways, my hope is to have the actual revised plan to you guys for the August meeting. If not before that, I could send it out early for your review.
Great, thank you. Randy?
Yeah, I just think thanks, Jessica, for that work, because I think it's super important. If we can separate the e-bike share or the e-scooter share is what's kind of holding us up. And, there's money that may become available through infrastructure plans and recovery money and stuff too that could possibly fund part of the bike share program. And we need to grab anything we can. And if we're not ready with a plan in place, then that's going to hold us up. So I appreciate the work you're doing to kind of separate that out, just getting us ready. Because then if there is money that's available that we can apply for, we can get that going. And that changes so much stuff. I mean, the Merriman meetings we've been having, we were talking about what the world's going to look like in 2045, and never once do they mention a mode shift, from just dependent upon car use. And part of that is because we don't have a connected system of bikeways and new pedestrian ways, which we were just talking about with UDO. But a big piece of that is going to be e-bikes and bike share. So if we do this here, this is going to help us to get to 2045, but we need to do it now, because if we don't, we're going to miss opportunity for potential funding, and it's just going to put us further behind. So I think it's super important we just move forward with this if we can, and I appreciate the work that you and Dan are doing, Jessica. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Right. Michael, did you have a comment?
No, I think Randy got it. I just want to clarify that we're talking about electric bikes and not just conventional bikes. But it sounds like we are talking about e-bikes with this program, right?
Both, yeah. So it'd be both traditional bikes and then e-bikes, because without e-bikes, we'd find all the bikes down by the rivers in a place like Asheville where it's kind of downhill towards that direction. But yeah, definitely e-bikes would be crucial in the study. We talked about that, making this program work.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And Jessica, just to clarify, we're also talking about peeling out the private ownership of scooters and, making those not part of the current regulation that the city has?
Correct.
Okay.
Although there's still, I think, council concern about e-scooters and similar devices in general. But I think, as Joe's talked about previously, I think the fact of the matter is that they exist. They're out there now. Technically, those people are in violation of the law, which I think is not right. So the idea is that the revised plan is going to make a recommendation that our next step for e-scooters be to explore and hopefully implement the legal ability for a private individual to own and operate an e-scooter or similar device in Asheville, and to separate that or peel it away from the concept of having these companies like Lime or whatever operating a sharing system of e-scooters.
Right, and I think that sooner rather than later, I see those one wheels, and I'm starting to see many more scooters going around town. So I just want to make sure that those folks are, feel like they're not doing anything that should be, I think it's a lovely alternate mode of transportation. Pat.
Right.
Yes, Randy, I was wondering if the existing sort of the touristy rent-a-bikes that have electric bike tours and stuff like that, have they been reached out to and connected, because they could be really great advocates for this, or they could feel threatened by all these extra electric bikes being out there publicly available? I just wondered if they were part of your conversation.
They established themselves after we started working on the study, when we had a group for this. So I don't think they've been included, because, again, the study was kind of put on pause, and then they came into the picture. But that's a good idea, though. I mean, because there's no reason to be threatened. Actually, they would be enhanced business opportunities because of bike share. So I think that you're right, though. We should have some communication with them just to make sure that they don't become an adversary in a situation in which they should be, an advocate with us for this program.
Excellent. Great. Jessica, do you have something to add to that?
No.
Okay.
No, makes sense.
Perfect. Okay. Next item is the update on the Transit Committee request to become a commission. Jessica, do you have an update, please?
Sure. Just briefly, the Boards and Commissions Committee, which is a council committee comprised of 3 council members, including Kim, met yesterday morning, and this was on their agenda. And so the staff report for that is attached to your agenda, if you want to take a look at that. They did not make any recommendations or decisions, final decisions on the topic. They want us to work with the city clerk's office, who's been doing some surveys and research in general about boards and commissions and committees, and work with them to see how this might work in general, and what would the makeup of it be if we were to move forward. So basically, in the end, they want some additional information to have at their next meeting. So Rochelle Sorensen-Cox from the Transit Committee, she attended yesterday and spoke about it. Kim spoke about it at length. And I think we got some really good information. They just want us to do a little bit more digging into what it would look like.
Great, thank you. Next item is the Merriman Avenue update.
Right, and this might be another one I asked Maggie to help me with because I had to leave early from that meeting, but we did have a meeting with them several weeks ago, and I believe we've got another one scheduled. Do we? Yeah, maybe. Can't remember.
They asked for dates, but I don't think it's been decided yet. So
okay. Right. So the conversation continues. There were some things that we, I think, agreed to that are, I think this is going to be a long-term conversation in the end. There were some things that we agreed to and they agreed to. One of them is that at our next meeting and future meetings, we have somebody from their mobility division in NCDOT who those folks are charged with looking at just having a broader perspective than just vehicles. That they have committed to having somebody from that staff division attend our discussions. I think they agreed that their studies that they presented haven't really considered thoroughly any other modes other than vehicles and level of service. I mean, so that was sort of an point of agreement. I think there were a couple other to-do items before the next meeting, although I'm struggling to remember what those are right now. So I think we're making progress in terms of our conversations, but we're still very far away from any decisions being made.
Yeah, I feel like from the last update you gave, the starting point was not really a good spot for the city of Asheville. So we have a long way to go, but at least they continue to go on. Randy?
Yeah, I was just say, first of all, it's great they're meeting with us, because my understanding is that 5 years ago it never would have happened. so that's great. And it's great that they understand to some extent that they don't understand. I mean, at one point, I remember the Division 13 head saying, "Oh, well, we understand that there's multi-users on some roadways, and other roadways are just for cars." I'm like, and see, he thinks he gets it, but he doesn't yet. But at least he's in the point where he understands there's more to get than he gets, And then they did understand, I remember talking to some of the staff that work on bike ped issues with NCDOT, and I think they're the state's largest employer with 12,000 employees. And there's 4 or 6 people that work in the multimodal for them. But there's no reason why they shouldn't be involved in this kind of discussion. And they did agree for that. And then we also said, well, you have level of service for cars, but you don't have level of service studies for bikes and peds. And they said, well, so they're starting to really slowly start thinking about things. They don't have any concept of mode shift. So hopefully we're moving towards that. But you're right. It's great that we're having these conversations because they could just be like, whatever, we don't have to have these, and they don't. But yeah, it's like pulling teeth together and move forward. But at least they're willing to come to the dentist to have the teeth pulled. so I guess I'm very, very cautiously optimistic, but at least there's room for some optimism in terms of, and regardless of what happens with Merriman, at least again, and they're bringing lots of staff in for these meetings too, which is great as well. Because we just had it with 1 or 2 people for them, then it doesn't broaden the scope because every single person on their staff has to have multimodal as an agenda item in their mind and every project they do. And they don't have that unless we have these kind of discussions. And so I think they're well worth having. And we're not at a huge roadblock, although we're at a small roadblock. Trying to still work over it. But there's hope for sure, I think.
Maggie?
Echo.
Here,
Yeah,
there you go.
I think that just want to echo what y'all are saying. No slam dunks, but they're still at the table. And what it really makes me think of is like, it reminds me of when I worked at the city and was doing a lot of change management to get city staff to pursue our climate goals. It was like, okay, facilities didn't do the thing that we talked about to be energy efficient, but they're still listening. And then one day they're like, I did the thing, And so I feel like we have the opportunity to like help them, because we would like present holes in their logic. They kept being like, well, our experts say, da, 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 da. I'm like, yeah, your experts only looked at traffic for cars. And they were like, oh, but our experts are like, right, you're at, like, if you ask a surgeon if you need to like remove your heart for a broken heart, they're going to say yes. Right. But it's a broken heart. So, I mean, it's a bad metaphor, but I think it's good. And I think that as long as like our goal is like supporting them in change and seeing different perspectives, I feel like we're succeeding and that it's working. Hopefully we'll see actual infrastructure improvement on Merriman someday, but it might be a while. But I feel like it's still worth it to be in these calls. I haven't quit. So that is a good sign. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Quick comment. The Public Works directors pointed out in another meeting that the DOT 20 years ago would flat out say that a traffic circle was ridiculous and nothing. And now it's one of the first things they think about when they have an intersection issue. So when the light bulb goes off, it goes off for a long, long time. And that's probably what's going to happen with Merriman. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I feel like we could be giving off the vibe of we're digging in our heels a little bit here, but I think this corridor is so critical to multimodal connectivity that it's imperative that we do that. So I'm always a little hesitant about being too combative, because I really feel like we got to bring positive energy to get a good solution. But it's just, we can't let this one slip away. So I just feel like we're heading in the right direction, and it seems like we're all hands on deck. So that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if we've mentioned before, but we have staff from the MPO also attending these discussions, which is, I think, beneficial it's beneficial in general, but I think the MPO, they've done a number of studies and plans too that sort of support what our goals are in recognizing that level of service, particularly in urban areas, should not always be the deciding factor. It should not be the only consideration. That there's acceptable levels of congestion during peak periods that people can expect to encounter in an urban area, and that we shouldn't be trying to design our way out of it, because that's just like a completely futile effort, in my opinion. So it's like a bit of, the discussions are a little bit of a philosophical battle, I think. But they're still engaged. They are the ones that are, reaching out to schedule this next meeting, for example. So, I think we're in a good spot, but it's going to be a long haul.
Ready?
Yeah, one thing real quick too at the end is that they too at one of the earlier meetings said that they are under the directive to follow this thing. And so I looked up what that thing was, and it said, they made it sound like it was, cars have priority, but it wasn't. It was advancing state interests over local interests. So then it was nice to be able to point out to them that they have a complete streets policy, which is a state interest. They have a Vision Zero policy, which is a state interest. And so over and over the last couple of meetings, I said, well, you say that the state interests are trump local interests. These are state interests that you've adopted. And so we're just trying to help you utilize those in our local community. And then you kind of see them almost want to dismiss that, but at the same time say like, I don't really, like, they almost don't understand how that relates to what they're doing, but yet it's a few little switches are maybe flipping when they hear that, the thing that they say they're trying to follow does not exclude what we're trying to do.
Right. Excellent. All right, onward. Okay, next item is the draft permanent right-of-way closure policy. Jessica.
Thank you. So after we met, I believe it was in April, where we talked at length about the draft policy for permanent right-of-way closures, there were a lot of questions which we recorded. I put together it's basically a Q&A memo. It's not anything fancy. And I tried to summarize the questions that we collectively had, and then asked our city attorney's office to take a look at those questions and provide some answers or some clarification if possible. So that memo is in your agenda. There's a link to it. And I was just going to take a minute or two to kind of highlight some of the conversations that I would say were larger, or not necessarily more important, but things that kind of kept coming up. So questions 3, 4, and 5 kind of had to do with whether or not, like what would constitute something being contrary to the public interest, and could we require certain things or make conditions on agreeing to close a permanent right-of-way or to close a right-of-way permanently. And basically the answer is that we can't condition it. We can't rescind an approval. Once it's been closed, it's been closed. But as far as figuring your role in helping to figure out whether a request is contrary to the public interest is just like what we talked about, where you can say, if you don't give me a plan, I can't really make a good decision about whether something is contrary to the public interest. And so some examples of whether something could be contrary is if it's going to be needed for a future connection, or whether it's a transportation connection or a utility connection or whatever. Those types of considerations and criteria that are included in the policy are completely fair game for you when you're looking at one of these requests and trying to make a decision or a recommendation on it. But we can't require them to give us a development plan, but it's sort of a cat and mouse kind of thing, I feel like, where there might be some straightforward requests that you don't really need to know, and but you might for a lot of them you might want to know what the plan is. But again, you have to keep in mind that you can't really make a judgment about the development itself. It's more about the development plan. What's the site plan? What are they going to do on their site? Not whether it's a hotel or an affordable housing project. We can't really make judgments against the use. Any questions on that topic?
I feel like when we went through this last month, the sense that I was getting, and one of the things that I think I struggle with a little bit is that I need to remember that when I'm running this through, whether I think it's a good idea or not, it's from a perspective of multimodal transportation and not from a perspective of use. Right. Traffic counts are going higher in a overloaded intersection. That's a multimodal issue. The inability for us to safely have a confluence of more pedestrians with more vehicles. That's one of the things that are in our issue. The number of stories in the building, that's not in my purview. So I think that's one of the things I was struggling with. And these answers kind of made me feel more comfortable about saying, we're going to make a recommendation based on that transportation issue. And there are going to be other folks, like the folks that Joe's working with, that might make a recommendation on some other application. So I think we can feel safe and strong in making that recommendation based on what we know is important to this group, what our charge is as a group. Joe?
So a couple of questions, Jessica. When now is the schedule for this to go to council to get approved? And then I know, and thank you for putting all those, that Q&A together from legal staff. That was great. I did note in that draft ordinance that you put in the packet, it does say in there that, the applicant shall at a minimum include the following. And, under number 1 is associated development project, if applicable, and the project level. I would say 90% of the time there's an associated development project, whether or not they want to admit it or not.
Right.
I get
Right.
what legal's saying, but, and maybe it is just that cat and mouse. Hey, if you don't show us what the development proposal is, you're not getting, a recommendation until you do. Like,
Right.
just hardball with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I still need to, there isn't a schedule right now that's defined out, but what I want to do is I want to go back through it all. I probably do need to make some tweaks based on things that legal said, and maybe that shall is not necessarily a shall, but when we accept an application, the application is going to ask for it, and hopefully they provide it. We'll make it seem like it's required. So there's some tweaks I still need to make, and then I guess, would you guys want me to come back with a final draft for you to look at, or do you want me to just try to more quickly move it towards a council decision? I'm happy to do either.
Are you thinking that you might have I would love to look at it. Just in general.
Yeah.
I don't know what your schedule is to have a final draft, though, and then get it through council. This is kind of another one of those little bits and pieces that, boy, it'd be great if we had it 6 months ago. So I don't want to slow down in getting to council either. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully I can get it wrapped up in the next month. I could put it on your agenda, again, but also try to work towards I can also put in the council schedule, like put in a request to be on a council agenda for September or something. So I think we can get there. Do both.
Good. And Joe, when I think about what you were talking about them not willing to share that and playing hardball, the way I look at that now is I cannot foresee a situation where I think that limiting future connectivity is a good idea unless there's a better idea to replace that idea. So I think we can play, to get to your point, get there without actually having to say, well, we're not going to, because I don't think it makes sense to limit our connectivity unless there's a really good reason to do that.
Yeah, I think real quick too, we had a situation like this in the last year where someone said, we want to block this right away off in this parking lot area, but we don't know what we're going to do with the parking lot area. Yeah. And so we recommended not to approve it because we're like, we don't know what you're going to develop there. What you develop there might make it harder for us to use the adjoining streets for multimodal. And they said, well, it might not though too. We said, well, sure, tell us what you want to do then, and we can make that judgment. And they said, well, we're not going to tell you. And then we said, well, then we're not going to approve it. So I think that, it wasn't like we were being mean about it. We're just like saying that our job is to help encourage multimodal transportation. And depending upon the use you're going to put on that property, it may negatively impact it. So we can't improve it until you show us it's not. It wasn't like being mean. That's our job.
Right.
Right. Yes.
And I do think there are ones that are going to come before you that will, on the flip side, be really straightforwardly easy for you to say, like, yeah, that's totally fine. Like, I can't think of an example immediately, but like there will be ones where you will just look at it and say, oh yeah, that's not a big deal. There's not really any big connectivity opportunity or anything. So I think you're going to see both. You're going to have some straightforward ones, and you're going to have some ones that are definitely going to be more complicated.
And to be honest, most of them are straightforward. Though we've dealt with over the years, 80%, 90% have been more straightforward. 10 or 20% have not been. So I think that'll probably continue, but at least it gives us some backing for the ones that aren't straightforward.
Right.
Agreed.
Right.
Okay, next item is the update on the citywide speed limit reduction.
I have nothing to report.
Any comments?
I'm sorry. So Jessica and I know Jessica I agree on almost everything, but this is one thing we struggle on. I say, hey, let's just tell the council to lower the speed limit. And she says we can't do that because legal hasn't given us the go ahead to do that. But we're a commission, so we don't have to listen to Jessica necessarily. We do a lot, and we trust her expertise, and her guidance is so important to us. And I never want to negate that in any way, shape, or form. But this is one time when we could say, as a commission, you know what? It's just the right thing to do. And if we get fought by the state, then we get fought by the state, and maybe the city isn't willing to put that forward, and that's up to the council to decide, But I think we should just say, let's lower the speed limit to 25, the default speed limit to 25. And then my hope is that the council will then approve that, and then we'll have to deal with that approval. And whether the state is like, it's not worth our trouble, let's let them do it. Or if they're like, no, if we're going to fight it tooth and nail, those Asheville people can't do that kind of stuff. Safety is, ridiculous. We're not going to let them be safer. But, but I think as a commission, we should just make the recommendation to city council, and then hopefully council will deal with it, But and I just want to be more cautious about it and stuff too. But we've been talking about it for a long time. It's the right thing to do. I think we should just do it.
Is that a motion?
I will make a motion that we recommend to city council to lower the default speed limit in the city of Asheville to 25 miles an hour.
Is there a
I'll
second?
that. Michael's
A second for Michael. Discussion. Comments?
Yahoo.
All right. Any other comments or questions?
Oh, and just real quick too, this actually came from the Bike Ped Task Force too. So it's not just me saying this. This is the Bike Ped Task Force, moved it to multimodal. We were following the process, multimodal transition, and now it's up to us to pass it to city council.
Okay. Let's do a roll call vote. Randy?
Aye.
Michael?
Definitely aye.
Kenny?
Aye, but I'd be fine with 20.
Pat? We lose Pat. Pat, can't hear you, Pat. Okay. John?
Aye.
Maggie?
Aye.
Bill?
I'll just abstain.
Okay. And I'm an aye as well. Pat, did you get back online? Can you hear us? All right, the motion carries. Well done. Okay. The next issue. Oh, Bill, yes, please.
I just can't resist. We spent an hour talking about a retreat, and we just voted on a citywide speed limit reduction in 3 minutes. I have obviously missed part of the memos on this thing, so I just couldn't resist.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we can definitely provide some context for you. Randy, you want to give some context?
Oh yeah, so it's been on the agenda for like a year. So a year ago, Bike Ped Task Force had this, moved through their committee, the task force, moved it up to this. We've been working on it forever because the state has an adversarial relationship with the city, with every city, to be honest. And so they make it real hard for cities to do things that the city, that the state wants to control. And so we've been trying to navigate this in a way that won't cause the ire of the state. And we've been doing it for a year. And so now we're just saying, hey, if we get the ire, we get the ire. And maybe city council won't take it up, but at least we've done our job. We've tried to make the city safer by lowering the default speed limit from 35 to 25. And I agree with Kenny that 20 would be better yet, but there is state rules that I've read that says you can't go down to 20, but you can go down to 25. So you can do street by street to 20, but you can't do a default to 20. So that's why we say 25. And other communities have done it. So that's the thing too. We're not the only community. Other communities have done it. And other communities have done it in different ways too. But Asheville would be a more prominent one to do it than some of the smaller communities. So hopefully we're okay. But either way, I think we should do it. So.
Yes, and we have. Okay, we're going to go into committee updates. First update is the Transit Committee. John, you have an update for us, please?
So let me see here. Let me look at my notes. The bus stop improvements are well underway. They are currently reviewing right of way for potential improvements at certain stops throughout the city. The new city bus shelter has no more plexiglass. I'm like going through notes from the last meeting. And actually scratch that, 'cause I'm not sure exactly what that note is. My handwriting is sloppy. I was in the car during this meeting, and my handwriting from the notes that I took are kind of sloppy. The digital signage is complete at the Downtown Transit Center. We spent a lot of time talking about the fare-free zone throughout the city for the buses. And the city's reviewing it because there's a lack of awareness of the zone. A lot of people don't know that we have a fare-free zone in Asheville. And it's difficult to monitor for the drivers when people are getting on and off the buses. Because then when they leave the fare-free zone, how do they collect fare from people once they leave the fare-free zone? So that's something that the city is monitoring. We talked a lot about mask distribution, that they are still distributing masks. And we are planning an upcoming retreat. So that's kind of where we're at with the Transit Committee from the last meeting.
Great, thank you very much.
And we are also, there's some vacancies on the committee that they're looking to fill. So we're looking to get more people. So if you know anybody who is interested in joining a committee, please send them that way.
Thank you. And I neglected to mention at the top of the meeting that unfortunately Lydia had to resign this week. She just couldn't, between her work schedule and other commitments, couldn't make the commitment to our group. So she's, we now do have a vacancy on our committee as well, or on the commission and on the Greenway Committee. Okay, speaking of Greenway, Kenny, do you have an update from Greenway?
No, I don't remember what happened last meeting. Did I miss one or what? But was the last one the DOT I-26 discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we already kind of went over that. We looked at the aesthetics committee, some of the decision making, and I forwarded Lucy a picture from Dillsboro where DOT had put in a new sidewalk, and instead of like an ugly retaining wall, they made a boulderized retaining wall where it's concrete but carved to look like stone in a really natural looking way. Anna was there too, so she can vouch. It turned out really cool. I think it's expensive, but I sent that along to kind of convey to the aesthetics committee that might be a better option for some of the other retaining wall solutions, especially along Riverside Drive, although I don't know how far they'll take that. And then there was discussion about lighting, and the committee made I think a formal recommendation on Duke Energy light poles to be used on DOT funded Greenway projects. So yeah, good meeting.
Good. Bike ped?
You're muted, Randy.
Okay. I was looking at too many screens. So I was not at the June meeting, but I was at the July meeting. In the June meeting, I believe they discussed primarily the Biltmore Fowl study, which I still have to go over some more of that because it's a lot of stuff. But we did talk about the Hendersonville Road study when I was in the July meeting, and we made a number of comments about it. And I'm not really sure exactly how we can do some of the things that are in it, because they kept saying, we made some comments that need to be recorded. I'm not sure how we can make sure that's implemented, because they kept saying, well, this is just a concept. But they had drawings, for example, which showed high-speed corners crossing over the new 10-foot multi-use trail on the one side of Hendersonville Road that's being proposed, for example. And so we really need to slow down, for example, the turning, radius, make it much more sharp so we can turn down the turning speed of cars turning over that, multi-use trail, for example. And those things constantly had like that. But then they kept saying, well, but that's just the drawings aren't actually plans. They're just, this is just an idea. So I hate to have the idea be dangerous moving forward. So there's a number of things that should be adjusted or commented on. They said they can't adjust it. They said the plan's done. So I think that we need to have published comments for that plan, and perhaps the Biltmore McDowell. Again, I wasn't here for that one in June. So I'm not sure how we can do that, but we need to figure out some way to do it, because they gave the presentation and we had lots of comments about it, and we need to have those recorded somehow to go along with the plan. So then when we do get funding 5, 10, 15 years from now for these things, they don't just say, well, this is what it looks like, and so let's build it like this, because it's not, it's much better than it is now, but it could be much better yet. And we know that now, and we just need to make sure that those comments are recorded somehow when that plan gets adopted. So Maggie, you were there too, I think, right? Actually, I'm sorry, my audio I wasn't able to contribute at one point in the meeting. My audio stopped working. I could hear, but I couldn't say anything. So maybe someone cut me off. I was talking too much.
The only thing I'd add was something that piqued my interest, and this is I don't know if this is interesting to others, but the group of people that were there was really diverse. That we had folks from the NPO, and we had us, and then there's lots of just people are really technically knowledgeable and have been walking the walk and thinking about this. I was just really blown away by the technical dedication, which was like, awesome. We totally need this type of conversation, because there were some leads that just needed other eyes on them. So that was pretty cool. And then one of the things that we talked about just really briefly was this DOT is pursuing conversation to put money into a brand new interstate interchange where I'm going to forget the name of the company that's building that economic development plant out in Maine.
Pratt & Whitney.
Did I know that name? Yes, thank you, Pratt & Whitney. And so, and I know that the economic development incentives for Pratt & Whitney is there's a lot of mixed feelings in the community, but what I found interesting, regardless of that, is that it's going to be extremely expensive, and we do a collaborative regional planning exercise to get projects in the queue. Anytime we go to DOT and we're like, hey, we want this multimodal project, or hey, we have safety concerns, they say, well, you got to get on the 15-year waiting list. Yet this project, which would absorb a huge amount of state budget, didn't go on the waiting list. So there's a lot to it. It seems like there's mega powers that be involved, and that the state does a lot in their negotiations for economic development. So frankly, it just might feel out of our reach, but it struck me as this doesn't feel really fair, because every time we ask for stuff for safety, y'all say there's no money and we have to wait on the list. But this project for economic development cut to the front of the line. So I just want to share that. I don't have a lot of the details, so I can't expound, but I just want to share for people's radar.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I want to say one thing real quick, though, in response to that. Once in a while, the state does respond, like in Meadow Road, which was supposed to be, I think, 2026 repaved, and they're bumping that up to the next year. So, I totally agree with Maggie in terms of the prioritization of how they deal things seems totally out of whack and in favor towards big money development. But this DOT, which contrary to other ones, from what I understand, or just a few years ago, would never have considered altering a paving schedule of Meadow Road, for example, just because we asked for it, and they have. So good and bad with them for sure.
I-26 Aesthetics Committee.
I don't have anything to share. I think Kenny touched on it a little bit. There was a joint meeting with the Greenway Committee and I-26 Aesthetics Committee last month to talk about some of those things. Anna?
Oh, sorry to jump ahead. Once you're done with that, I was going to say I do have a knack update. So.
Oh, please.
Yeah, go for it.
Thanks. We had our meeting on Monday, so that agenda it just hasn't been published yet, which is probably why there's no attachment in the meeting materials. Same with maybe Joe as well. But one thing of interest to Multimodal, I think, is we had Rebecca Chaplin, who is the Associate State Director of the Mountain Region of AARP, come give us a presentation on how to build capacity between NAC or even neighborhood organizations and AARP. And she sort of reiterated several times that a lot of the work that they do is sort of senior focused, but it really is about making neighborhoods and communities a better place to live and more accessible and connected. So she did touch on their livable communities initiatives, which they've partnered with Asheville on Bikes in the city, I believe, for the different tactical urbanism projects that we've seen on Cox Avenue and over in West Asheville. But a couple of items got my attention, one of which is saying that they do offer I think funding or sort of shared funding to develop transit stops in certain locations that may be needed. So I thought that was really interesting. And then also letting us know that they have community challenge grants available. And that funding cycle, typically the application process runs February through April, but they offer anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 for placemaking initiatives and grants. So while it may not be something that Multimodal could leverage as a commission, just wanted to get the word out to you all for your neighborhoods and communities for if you see a need that related to transportation or multimodal connectivity or even transit stops, that that resource might be available to folks. So that's what I've got.
Excellent, thank you. P&Z update, Joe?
I mostly wanted to comment on something that Randy made regarding that Hendersonville Road corridor study. We are actually next week's planning and zoning meeting will have a presentation report on all three corridor studies: Hendersonville, Tunnel, and Biltmore McDowell. So Randy, I will definitely make mention of your comment, about making sure public comment is part of all that. If you want, you could certainly come to or submit comments to planning and zoning about that Hendersonville Road corridor study. I mean, it's part of our public meeting, and so public comments are allowed on those items. So, we are back to in-person meetings. And going all the way back to something Jessica mentioned about Multimodal's upcoming in-person meeting, those TV screens, there's 2 at the front, 2 at the back. So when you're sitting at the dais, you can see the 2 big screens, which is much nicer than having, for those who are used to or were previously in that room, having to kind of crank your head around to the side to look. So it is much better from that standpoint. So
just real quick, I'm planning on having the Hendersonville Road and Tunnel Road studies on our August agenda.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay, please note the staff updates, the list of projects that are always attached. We have our future agenda items. If you have anything that you would like to add, send that off to Jessica or Amy, and we can get that on there. Next meeting, we're scheduled for 8/25 in person. That's exciting. And Pat, yes, please.
I just, on the list of projects, I was trying to print it out and I was not able to do that. Is another place to get it?
I'm not sure why you wouldn't be able to print it.
I had to try and get to change the size, and then it wanted to print 75 pages.
Oh.
So
Okay.
is
I
there a
will
different
try to.
link, or should I open it in a Excel spreadsheet, or it was not in a PDF form. So
Right.
it was in the Excel spreadsheet form.
Right. Yeah, it's in Google Sheets so that we just update the same thing every month. But I could make a PDF of it and send that to you. But
That
it would
would be
just
awesome.
be
That
a
would
static.
help me get up to speed and go like look at the projects and stuff like that.
Sure. Yep.
I'd
Can
appreciate
do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Without further comment, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.